During the Battle of Sekigahara against Ieyasu and his army, our main protagonist, called Shimazu Toyohisa, manages to mortally injure Ieyasu, but is critically wounded in the process. Ieyasu's army is forced to retreat due to Toyohisa's perseverance and resilience. As he walks from the battlefield wounded and bleeding, Toyohisa finds himself transported to a white hallway of doors, where a bespectacled man at a desk waits for him. As he is about to attack the mysterious man, Toyohisa is sucked into one of the doors and transported to a new world. He is dropped into a field unconscious when two elven children speaking a strange language find Toyohisa and decide to bring him to a castle ruins, which we discover is the hideout for two other drifters. Drifters are a group of historically famous figures from various periods of the Earth's timeline. Toyohisa's wounds are stitched up, and after waking up from a dream, he meets a man called Oda Nobunaga, a daimyo who was killed 18 years prior to Toyohisa's involvement in the Battle of Sekigahara, and another man called Nasu Yoichi, an effeminate archer who died almost 4 centuries ago. The trio discusses how they met the same bespectacled man, who brought them to the unknown world. Outside of their hideout, a female spy monitors the drifters and is contacted by a man via a magical crystal ball to check on her status. The man in white decides to meet the drifters and mobilize their men, known as the Octobrist Organization, to prepare for the upcoming war with a race of reincarnates called the Ends, an opposing force advocating for the destruction of the world. In a desert wasteland, two drifters called Hannibal and Scipio are in the middle of a heated argument, while a member of the Octobrist Organization, called Ham, observes them from afar. Ham is ordered by the man in white, called Abe, to bring the drifters to him in preparations for the war against the Ents. Meanwhile, the elven village located near Toyohisa's group of drifters is attacked and set on fire by soldiers from the Ort Empire for associating with the drifters. Alerted by the smell of battle, Toyohisa heads to the village to rescue the elves in order to repay his debt to the young elves, called Marcia and Mark, for helping him earlier. Joined by Nobunaga and Yoichi, they easily defeat the elves' oppressors. Enraged by the carnage and cruelty inflicted upon the elves by the Empire's soldiers, Toyohisa brutally beats the commander knight, called Aram, with the sheath of his sword, before convincing the elves to kill Aram themselves. In the white corridor of doors, the bespectacled man, who we discover is called Murasaki, is visited by his nemesis, called Easy, who mocks his efforts to send drifters to the unknown world to combat her Ends, who have begun invading the southern regions of the world. In the kingdom of Carnides, Abe and Ham try to convince the commanders of the defensive troops to let Scipio and Hannibal take charge of their army. However, the leaders refuse to give the two drifters command over their troops, seeing them as nothing more than useless old men. Unable to reason with the soldiers, Abe decides to withdraw the Octobrists and the drifters from the country, as the Ends and their army, consisting of dragons, goblins, and other non-human races, begin their attack. The leader of the Ends, called the Black King, sends a man called Hijikata and two women, called Jean and Anastasia, onto the battlefield, and questions a man called Minamoto to see if his allegiance is with the drifters or the Ends. Minamoto vaguely states he will go to the side that interests him the most. Soon after, a World War II fighter pilot, called Naoshi, descends into the world via a corridor inside his aircraft. Bewildered by the circumstances, Naoshi engages the Black King's dragons, thus indicating himself as a drifter, with the aid of a couple other drifters called Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid. Seimei, Ham, Scipio, and Hannibal escape from Carnides to join up with Toyohisa's group. The Black King orders the Ends to find the drifters and kill them. Meanwhile, the female spy monitoring Toyohisa's group is discovered by him and his companions. The spy, called Almanu, informs the drifters that they have been brought to the New World to fight against the Ends, though the trio quickly rejects the idea, much to her surprise. Almanu explains to them that their purpose as drifters is to save the world from being annihilated by the Ends. To accomplish this, she informs them that the Octobrists are tasked with gathering the drifters together and appealing to the kings and feudal lords of the various states and countries to give command over their armies to the drifters. However, Nobunaga is skeptical that the lords would allow outsiders to take charge of their armies. Instead, he proposes that the drifters, led by Toyohisa, take over the Ort Empire. Meanwhile, following his success at Carnides, the Black King tends to his wounded troops and orders a man, called Rasputin, to spread the news of Carnides' defeat to recruit more soldiers in their army. Back in the elven village, Toyohisa's group offer to assist the elves with their fight against Ort to reclaim their state, though Toyohisa and Nobunaga fight over the leadership arrangements. The eldest son of the murdered village chief, called Shara, interrupts them and pleads for their help. Toyohisa eventually agrees to take the role of the commander and begins to set a trap for the Ort forces set to arrive in 3 days. On the third day, a force of 200 Ort troops march into the village, only to find it uninhabited. Encamped in the trees outside of the village, the drifters and elves prepare to strike the Ort soldiers at nightfall. Prior to the ambush planned by the drifters, Nobunaga uses corpses and various human waste to create a pit. After Toyohisa buries the heads of the deceased as a sign of respect. Meanwhile, Yoichi begins to train the elves in archery, and is surprised to learn that they have an innate aptitude for it. As night sinks in, the Ort troops notice that the village's water well was filled with excrement. At nightfall, Toyohisa and the elves launch their attack on the Ort soldiers, as Nobunaga forms an enclosure to trap the Ort troops and continuously bombards them with waste-laden arrows. Toyohisa beheads the commander of the troops, prompting the remaining soldiers to flee. In the forest, Yoichi kills the fleeing soldiers, who fall victim to excrement-infested traps. After their successful battle, Toyohisa urges the elves to rescue the female elves. Disguised as Ort troops, the drifters and elves make their way to the local magistrate's fort and locate the women. Much to his horror and disgust, Toyohisa discovers that the women have been used as mating slaves by the Ort soldiers, and vows to slaughter them all in retribution. After successfully taking over the fortress, Nobunaga rummages through the magistrate's office for vital documents. At his inquiry, Almanu reveals to Nobunaga that the founder of the Ort Empire was a man called Adolf Hitler, who committed suicide shortly after establishing the country 50 years ago. Receiving word that Toyohisa plans to execute the Ort soldiers for assaulting the female elves, Nobunaga stops him and gives the execution order himself, not wanting the latter to dirty his hands with blood. Toyohisa punches Nobunaga for interfering, and the two reach an agreement to let Toyohisa do whatever he feels is right in the future. The drifters return the women back to their respective villages with a proclamation, which contains information about the heavy losses Ort is suffering from waging wars with numerous states. As a result, elven villages across the land begin to revolt and join the drifters. In Ort's capital city, the city's council discusses the losing wars in neighboring states, particularly their war against the merchant guild of Gubinnen. Count St. Jeremy, a powerful nobleman and former ally of Hitler, realizes Ort's impending downfall and chooses to seek an alliance with the drifters. At nightfall, Jean, Gilles, and several soldiers of the Black King's army approach the drifters' hideout. Jean, Gilles, and a cavalry of the Black King's army attack the drifters' camp. After evacuating the elven women and children, Toyohisa confronts Jean, who he mistakes for a man, while Yoichi faces off against Gilles. In the forest, Nobunaga and the elves take care of the cavalry. With Almanu's assistance, Toyohisa is able to defeat Jean, but refuses to kill her when he realizes that she is a woman. Meanwhile, Yoichi struggles in his battle against Gilles due to the latter's inhuman strength and durability. Before Yoichi is nearly killed, Butch and the Sundance Kid arrive at the scene, using their Gatling gun to destroy Gilles's body and save Yoichi. Gilles barely survives the brutal onslaught, much to the drifters' shock. Seeing Jean being rescued by the Dragon Riders and the Black King's army, Gilles dies with a smile, and promises to wait for Jean to join him in the afterlife as he disintegrates into salt. After reuniting with Almanu, Abe introduces himself to the drifters as the leader of the Octobrist organization. In a secluded area, Yoichi reflects on his battle with Gilles, when he is approached by Minamoto, who mocks his former subordinate for following Bushido, despite committing dishonorable acts during the Genpei War while under his command. A distressed Yoichi tells Minamoto he will never take orders from him again, but Minamoto merely laughs at him before he departs. Meanwhile, Abe tells Nobunaga he was brought to the New World to help combat the Ents. Toyohisa returns and informs the group that he knocked Jean unconscious in a nearby well. Seimei reprimands Toyohisa for allowing Jean to escape due to her gender, but Toyohisa is determined to uphold his principles and not become Murasaki's pawn. The next day, Scipio, who was separated from Abe's group during the ride to meet with Toyohisa's group, encounters Nayashi, who has been appointed the Sky God to a tribe of anthropomorphic dogs. Back at the drifters' camp, Butch and Sundance Kid explain the mechanics behind their firearms to Nobunaga, who becomes ecstatic at the notion of producing more modern firearms. Nobunaga reveals to a concerned Abe that he wishes to create a multiracial federation, with Toyohisa as their leader. At nightfall, Toyohisa leads his group to free the dwarves from Ort while Abe, Butch, and Sundance Kid leave to search for Scipio and continue their investigation on the Ents. While Count St. Jeremy and his aides journey to the elven village to meet with the drifters, Toyohisa's group attacks the Ort Empire's largest armory in Gadalka to save the dwarves. Utilizing the gunpowder that Nobunaga has concocted with the elves' assistance, Toyohisa leads the charge against the troops stationed there. However, they are unable to enter the walled town after the Ort soldiers close the entrance gate. Hannibal gives Nobunaga the idea to use Yoichi's arrows and Almanu's stone wall spells to cast a staircase alongside the gate, enabling Toyohisa's group to invade the town and free the dwarves. Since the dwarves have been suffering from starvation during their captivity, Toyohisa orders meals to be prepared for them instead of taking down the castle defenders. Toyohisa negotiates with the remaining Ort troops to surrender peacefully and allows them to escape. though he slays the commander. When Yoichi prepares to pursue the fleeing troops, a habit he developed when serving Minamoto in the past, Toyohisa stops him and tells him that he does not have to follow dishonorable orders anymore since this is their war, much to Yoichi's delight. Meanwhile, a member of the Octobrist organization and his partner, called Doug, spy on the Ends at Carneades. They are horrified to learn that the Black King taught primitive agriculture to the monsters that will someday replace the humans once the Ends have eliminated mankind. The Black King attempts to recruit one of the 6 great dragons, the Bronze Dragon, into joining his army, but is met with contempt and refusal by the latter for subjugating his dragon brethren as pets in his army. Using his ability to replicate the cells of any life form, the Black King tortures the Bronze Dragon by causing his body to suffer from cancerous growth to gain his compliance. Afterwards, Rasputin presents the completion of a simple alphabet and a syncretic religion for the demi-humans to learn to help establish a unified, multiracial community as per the Black King's wishes. Meanwhile, Jean awakens from her coma after her fight with Toyohisa and is informed by Anastasia that Jills is dead. An enraged Jean vows to avenge her fallen comrade by killing Toyohisa, to which Anastasia scolds her for her recklessness before promising to let her do as she pleases when the time comes. In Gadalka, Nobunaga requests that the dwarves begin forging muskets for their army to use in future battles. The next day, Count St. Jeremy and his companions arrive in Gadalka to meet with the drifters, sending his aides to test Toyohisa to see if they are worthy to form an alliance. St. Jeremy reveals to Almanu that he is a drifter, and that he wants to sell the Ort Empire to the drifters before Ort is destroyed by other warring countries. In order to accomplish this, St. Jeremy recommends that the drifters plan a coup d'etat to seize Ort as their territory, which is a seizure and removal of a government and its powers. While St. Jeremy's aides sneak the drifters and their army into the Ort Empire's capital city, St. Jeremy holds an emergency council meeting with the lords tasked with overseeing Ort, and informs them that he is selling the country to the drifters. He attempts to coerce the noblemen to surrender peacefully, however, is disrupted by Rasputin, who possesses 2 of the nobles to reveal that the Black King is also planning to seize the Ort Empire for his campaign. After being humiliated by Toyohisa and Nobunaga, Rasputin retreats, and the Black King sends Hijikata and his troops to combat the drifters in the capital, shifting their focus from seizing Ort to destroying it to prevent the drifters from obtaining it. To assist with the ensuing battle, St. Jeremy gives his personal army over to Nobunaga to act as the army's gunner squad while Toyohisa and Yoichi lead the dwarves and elves into the fray. After the drifters successfully take out the End's vanguard, an angered Hijikata heads onto the battlefield. As the drifters and their army decimate the End's troops, Hijikata gives orders for his soldiers to break into smaller units and disperse into the streets, setting the city ablaze while heading to Ort's capital buildings. Hijikata and Toyohisa meet in the street and engage one another in a deadly duel, with Hijikata using the ghostly images of dead Shinsengumi to attack Toyohisa. Meanwhile, Nobunaga and Hannibal decide that instead of chasing the End's troops, they will trap their enemies in the capital buildings when they arrive, and kill them with Yoichi's squad and Almanu's reluctant assistance. With their army destroyed, the Black King orders Hijikata to withdraw from his fight against Toyohisa, who is left badly injured. Back in Carneades, Rasputin apologizes to the Black King for their failure for seizing Ort, though the Black King is pleased that they were able to cripple the capital city and gauge the drifters' strength. Aishai thinks back to hearing Nobunaga's voice during his encounter with Rasputin, and decides to join the Ends in the hope of killing Nobunaga in the next battle. And this brings the anime to an end. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on another video. Until next time, take care.